Okay, so we heard about this cool Korean gacha game, Limbus Company, right? Or maybe it was that crazy difficult SAP management game. Maybe that deck builder one? Wait, what is ProjectMoon anyway? It's a game company? Alright, what are their games? They're the ones I've mentioned, of course. Okay, but they're really different in their gameplay and are kinda long, and they seem to be connected for a shared dystopian universe. There are also these things? Should I read them first to immerse myself in the lore? What about spoilers? Where do I start? Hi, name's Venno, and I'm here to answer questions that nobody asked. How is an outsider supposed to orient themselves in such a rich universe? Well, the answer may seem pretty obvious, but there are still some specifics that I would like to talk about. The video's aim is to introduce these games, as well as the supplemental material, to the newcomers. These introductions will be rather brief and will not entail a detailed review of them, but rather provide a general idea of what the games are and my general opinions on them. I will also try to explain how to experience them in a spoiler-free way and provide jump-in points from which you can start to enjoy them. However, I have to warn you that ProjectMoon's games cover a multitude of difficult and uncomfortable subjects, like these. So, if gore, suffering, corporate greed, and many other dystopian mainstays are not your cup of tea, this franchise is unfortunately not for you. Trust me, it gets really dark at times. Now, with the preamble out of the way, let's begin our journey down the rabbit hole, starting with... Everything starts here, the very first game of the series, Lobotomy Corporation. This is a management sim where you control your employees and send them to work on abnormalities that produce energy. The goal of each level, or day, is to gather enough energy to meet the energy quota. That is all. Pretty simple, right?
Wrong.
Every abnormality has unique working requirements that need to be memorized as the facility expands into dozens and dozens of abnormalities. Every agent needs proper equipment and stats to work and eventually fight those abnormalities. Otherwise, they die. And they die plentifully, especially if not careful. A day may take somewhere between 10 minutes to an hour, depending on the amount of bullshit you need to deal with. And if you mess up even once, lose one of your precious high-level agents, or... then you might consider restarting the day and doing it all over again. Oh, did I mention that it's impossible to beat the game fully in one playthrough? Yeah, this is a roguelike, and the run may take you hours and hours of slow, agonizing progress that will eat away at your sanity. I wish that you had the lobotomy in real... Oh hey, that's the name of the game. So yeah, this is a management game, but it's more of a torture simulator than anything else. Don't get me wrong, this is my favorite game of the series for a good reason. The stress and tension that the merciless gameplay loop provides result in a satisfaction that often comes with difficult games. You will treasure your agents and develop attachment to them, only for them to die meaninglessly or come out as a badass hero. The abnormalities bring with them a ton of unique mechanics that will make your time both miserable and entertaining. And the story of suffering and hopelessness uniquely connects to the gameplay, as you too will sometimes feel like this is all for nothing and that you will never beat the game. This is a game that needs to be experienced by yourself, but don't be ashamed if it breaks you, as it did many before you. Luckily, the next game is a bit wider in difficulty, just a bit though. Hello, and welcome to the library. May you find your book in this place. So, have you played any games where you go into a dungeon, kill a couple of waves of monsters, and get the loot? Imagine now that you're the monsters, and the loot that you get is the
Souls of the innocent
that you use to make yourself stronger. Yeah, that's the Library of Ruina. But let me explain this a bit more clearly. This is a turn-based deck builder game where you control up to 5 librarians with their own decks and stats and pit them against the enemies. Each turn you select a card, or a page, from a librarian's hand, which becomes their attack. You then target an enemy, which usually results in one of the two scenarios. Scenario 1. They get absolutely clobbered. Scenario 2. You both meet each other in a clash, where your page and the opponent's page are fighting against each other. You then compare dice on the page, and the results of the dice determine whether you win or not, and how much damage you deal. After this happens for every librarian and opponent, the turn ends. Pretty simple. Wrong. Now, this game is not nearly as punishing as Lobotomy Corp, but it still requires a hefty sum of your brain cells to be alive and active. Because guess what? This is a library of Ruina. And what do you do in the library? You read. A lot. There's a lot of reading. And some of it will fly over your head. It did over mine. Lots of descriptions of attacks, passives, buffs, debuffs, stats, unique pages, game mechanics, and so much more. Just for reference, a single boss encounter may have a page's worth of unique mechanics that you will encounter only once, maybe twice, over the whole game. And the game's pretty long, so there's a lot of reading to be done. Oh, and don't rely on the tutorial. These are historically horrendous in ProjectMoon games, and don't give enough information, nor present it in a digestible, easy-to-understand way. Alright, then what about the difficulty itself? There is a saying in the community: the difficulty spike is vertical. The game may seem easy at first, but it will kick your ass, on multiple occasions. However, if you're smart with your deck building and are familiar enough with the game mechanics, and have a semblance of reading comprehension, then this game will prove to be a challenging, yet extremely rewarding endeavor, since the game's story is some of the best writing that ProjectMoon has ever produced, and the characters are some of my all-time favorites. So, give it a try. You certainly won't regret it. Now, it is high time we get into some real pain, real suffering that will shake you to the very core of your being. A true inferno like no other. A real test of your mental fortitude and pain tolerance. The most diabolical game genre of them all. Yes, we're about to talk about the... Okay, it's not that bad to be honest. Limbus Company, the gacha in question, is the latest project of ProjectMoon, receiving constant updates to this day. And if you read or heard any positive review of this game, you may have heard that it is more of an actual game rather than a PNG gambling simulator. My opinion? Kinda. It is certainly the most un-gacha-like game on the market, since its generosity is simply unmatched. Not only you get constant gambling resources, it is actually suboptimal to even engage in gambling at all. It is possible to get every single unit and equipment because you can just grind for everything.
Oh, brother!
Yeah, this is where the Korean MMO roots creep in a little. Still better than all the live service predatory practices in my opinion. Okay, enough slander in the game, let's see what's actually happening in there. You control a team of units called Sinners. Before entering combat, you can change them into alternate universe versions of themselves that you pulled from the gacha, which will give them different skills and stats. The dashboard is how you select those skills, by dragging a chain through them and ensuring that most or all of them say either dominating or favored. Then you finish the chain and the game determines the results in subsequent attacks and clashes. Pretty simple, right? Yeah, actually. This game is often called Ruina Light, simplifying most of the aspects that made the game confusing for casual players. Not saying that there is no reading to be done, there are certainly plenty of walls of text in here. It's just that it's usually enough to understand the basic mechanics of the game to get through most of the content. I press win rate, I say dominating, I press enter, repeat. The game will kick your ass on occasion though, but that usually can be circumvented by getting lucky, gain an OP unit from a friend, or, you know, actually learning the game properly. You can watch Asgu's excellent tutorials to understand all the mechanics, they're great. I like the in-game one. Now, the main reason why everyone praises the game to high heavens. The story. It's excellent, as usual. The main cast consists of the 12 sinners that you control, your very helpful and not at all terrifying guide, his daughter Fu, who doesn't even know basic directions, and you. Each sinner will have a dedicated story chapter that will largely explain who they are and how much therapy they will have to go through after all of this is over. The character writing is great, everyone has their moment to shine, and their group chemistry is hilarious and entertaining to watch. The chapters by themselves have some of the highest emotional peaks that I've ever witnessed in a video game story, in some places even outshining the previous games. They are a real treat. Alright, I've glazed the games enough. Time for the actual guide. Now then, where do we start? For some, this question might be really simple. Just play them in release order, right? Okay, let's do that. Let's establish this order in which all of the ProjectMoon media can be experienced without spoiling one another. Starting with the main games. Now, there's also the supplemental material that has to be mentioned briefly. It is not at all required to enjoy the games, but these are stories that considerably flesh out this shared universe and are great entertainment on their own. There are some caveats though. Starting with Wonderlab, a Lobotomy Corp comic featuring the story of a branch facility and the lives of the employees there. The comic was taken off from official sources and is largely non-canon, though some of the abnormalities from it are in Library of Ruina. Still a good read in my opinion. Distortion Detective, a web novel about a pair of fixers investigating strange phenomena known as the distortions. This one is interesting. It should be canon, but it was cancelled at chapter 42. Why? The novel was so fire that ProjectMoon decided to make it into a standalone game. A visual novel, supposedly. When will we get this game? Who knows? That's why some people refrain from reading it and avoid the game. Though those who did read it praise it like it's the best thing since bread. It was really entertaining for me at least. And last is Leviathan, a prequel to the Limbus Company about the boss guy, Virgilius. Reading it is a mess to be honest. Let me explain. The first 11 chapters were illustrated as a webcomic, but later transitioned to a web novel format due to the artist's health struggles. The English translation continued, but only until chapter 15, after which it went on hiatus. When will it get fully translated? Probably never. There are fan translations of the work that are pretty accurate. The story itself is decent, and contains some real useful info that is going to be relevant in Limbus Company. Yeah, ProjectMoon's experience with supplemental materials is pretty messy. I will leave links to all of the aforementioned webcomics and novels in the description, since it can be annoying trying to find full English versions. Now, let's establish the proper route, from start to finish, in release order. Lobotomy Corporation, Wonderlab, Library of Ruina, Distortion Detective, Leviathan, Limbus Company. Pretty simple, right? Not really. I could end the video here, and for most people this would be enough information about how to approach the franchise. Start from the beginning and go from there. But I have to confess, I call myself a ProjectMoon fan, but I've never finished any of their games. I know, I'm a fake and a fraud, but this is the case for a lot of the fans. These games are not easy. They require a lot of blood, tears, and time. A shit ton of time. Time that not everyone has. Sure, Lobotomy Corp weaves the player's suffering into its narrative, enhancing the drama and the catharsis at the end, but it doesn't make the soul-crushing gameplay any more bearable. That's why some people choose to skip the game, and while we're at it, Library of Ruins genre may not be to everyone's liking. I don't like deck builders, so instead of forcing myself to engage with actual deck building, I resorted to guides. But that sucked out all of the enjoyment of the game, so I skipped Ruina as well. And now I'm at Limbus. I watched most of what I skipped on YouTube. I took the skip route, abandoning a game after I hit a wall or my interest in it faded. This is not a path I recommend taking, since ProjectMoon games tightly knit gameplay with narrative in all of their games. By skipping games and watching the story on YouTube, you lose some of that intended design that would enhance your experience. But it is a path that you might be forced to take, and that is understandable. Hey, Venno. Oh, hey, Turi. What's up? I've been listening to your guide and, yeah? It fucking sucks. Uh-huh. Yeah, you didn't really say anything except vent about your skill issue and tell us that the correct way to play is in release order. Anyone could have figured that out. Your audience is not stupid. Well, okay, I was getting to the point where I would offer another way. A method, if you will. Oh, yeah? I bet it's the same predictable garbage that you've been spewing all this time. How about you go and do something that is less... So, let's say we don't want to skip anything, eventually play through all the games and experience all the story with minimum to no spoilers. But we also want the freedom to take a break if we find the game too difficult and jump to a different one. We'll need to familiarize ourselves where and when you can encounter a moment in the story that will affect your experience in another game. I will now devise a route which will take into consideration all of the above. Let's call it the fluid route. Now, to mark down where and which point you will encounter spoilers, starting with Lobotomy Corp. Now, you may totally disagree, but I believe Lobotomy Corp is the one game that is absolutely fucked in terms of being spoiled. The mere existence of the second game kinda spoils the ending of the first, and don't get me started on Limbus. So, I believe that you can play Lobotomy Corp whenever. It is largely a story of abnormalities, and the first 3 letters of the alphabet, which is not terribly relevant as of now, and you won't totally ruin the experience of subsequent games by playing it or not. Wonderlab. You can freely read it until like chapter 47. After that, it's preferable you finish Lobotomy Corp first. Library of Ruina. The game by itself doesn't spoil anything, but it benefits the most from a blind playthrough. It also provides a satisfactory retelling of relevant Lobotomy Corp events if you decide to skip it. Distortion Detective. I don't know, Lamau. I decided to not finish it since I've heard of the cancellation. The safe bet would be waiting for the visual novel, but I don't think the story has any conflicts with others. You can correct me in the comments if there are. Leviathan. First chapter completely spoils Ruina. Enough said. Limbus. This is the most beginner-friendly entry point, since the game is free and by far the easiest one in the franchise. Do be warned that Lobotomy Corp ending is somewhat spoiled in Chapter 1, and Ruina ending is also partially spoiled in Chapter 4.5 SEA. Now to summarize. Play Lobotomy Corp whenever, doesn't matter. Finish Ruina as soon as possible. Play Limbus whenever, right until Chapter 4.5. Then check whether you finished Ruina. If yes, go ahead. If no, you can grind mirror dungeons while you play Ruina. Supplemental material? Points Wisdom. Here, my official fluid route. Use it as a set of guidelines, as a gospel, as something to point and laugh at, whatever. Probably a silly thing that was, but I had fun figuring an exact spoiler-free path in obsessive detail. This video is probably completely riddled with mistakes. Feel free to correct me in the comments. Now it's time to wait until PM releases a new game that will inevitably outdate this video. Next time I will list all of the 30+ books, movies and games that you will need to fully appreciate the genius of our holy canine overlord Kim Jae-hoon. Bye bye!